Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we dive into one of the most ambitious cinematic projects ever conceived. A movie that took more than a decade to grow, that pushed the limits of what was possible, and that transported us into a world so vibrant, so deep, and so emotionally powerful that it redefined modern cinema forever. We're talking about Avatar, the 2009 masterpiece by James Cameron. A film that not only broke every record imaginable, but changed the way we see technology, nature, and our place within it. And before we begin, remember that in the description below, you have a completely free PDF with exercises to practice the English you'll learn throughout this episode. Now, let's step into Pandora. James Cameron had been dreaming of telling stories that didn't just entertain, but expanded our imagination. For decades, long before he created Pandora, he was a visionary boy fascinated by science fiction, the deep sea, and realms that didn't exist. He spent hours drawing strange creatures, inventing planets, imagining impossible machines. And as he grew, so did his ambition. He became a director known for a single, unbreakable rule. If something seems impossible, then it's worth trying. The seed of Avatar was planted in 1994. Cameron wrote an 80-page treatment, full of forests glowing with life, towering blue beings, floating mountains, and a world connected by an invisible spiritual network. But at that time, the technology simply wasn't ready. He didn't want digital characters that looked animated. He wanted life. He wanted the audience to look into the eyes of a CGI character and forget it wasn't real. In 1994, that was impossible. So Cameron did what only Cameron would do. He waited, but he didn't sit still. While the world believed he was taking a break, Cameron was quietly pushing technology forward, developing systems, experimenting with new techniques, and imagining tools that didn't exist yet. During this waiting period, he directed Titanic, a film that shattered every box office record in history. Most directors would have rested after such a triumph. But Cameron wasn't thinking about rest. He was thinking about Pandora. His obsession remained the same, the union between technology and emotion. He used to say, technology should be a brush, not the painting. Avatar, in his mind, would be his most ambitious painting. In the early 2000s, Cameron finally returned to the project. He began traveling to laboratories, testing prototypes, working with engineers to design cameras capable of capturing the most delicate human expressions. He visited rainforests, studied bioluminescent organisms, and explored marine ecosystems, all to understand how Pandora should feel. Organic, vibrant, majestic, alive. And for the Na'vi, he didn't look only toward science fiction. He turned to real indigenous cultures, ancestral rituals, and the spiritual relationship many communities hold with the land. He wanted a story set on another planet, but grounded in the truths of our own. That was the moment Avatar truly began to breathe. Pandora wasn't just a setting. Cameron wanted it to be a living organism, a planet with ecosystems, cultures, biology, and mythology woven together in harmony. He worked with anthropologists, linguists, sound engineers, botanists, biologists. The Na'vi language was not random sounds. It was a full linguistic system created by Professor Paul Frommer, complete with grammar, syntax, and expression. But the more detailed Pandora became, the greater the technological challenge grew. Cinema had never seen anything like this. No camera existed that could capture the micro-expressions Cameron needed from his actors. So he decided to invent one. He developed the now iconic head-mounted camera, capable of capturing every tiny gesture, every blink, every tremor beneath the skin. For the first time, digital characters could express real human emotion with absolute fidelity. Zoe Saldana, who brought Neytiri to life, said the camera was so close to her face she could feel it vibrate. But because of that closeness, every emotion, anger, tenderness, fear, love, was captured with perfect precision. The Na'vi don't act emotions, they feel them. Cameron also demanded physical authenticity. The actors learned archery, tribal dance, breath techniques, and how to move with an imaginary tail. They rehearsed barefoot, practiced animal-inspired movements, and trained to embody a species connected to its environment. Their posture, breath, and gestures were designed to reflect a culture deeply in tune with nature. Even the creatures of Pandora were built as if they belonged to a real evolutionary system. Biologists, paleontologists, industrial designers all collaborated to create animals that looked fantastical, yet plausible. Every wing pattern, bone structure, and muscle movement was designed with biological logic. The result, creatures that feel impossible and completely real. And then, the forest. Pandora's bioluminescent jungle became one of the most iconic achievements in visual effects. Every plant was designed to react to touch, to pulsate, to breathe. The inspiration came from real bioluminescent organisms, deep-sea creatures, glowing fungi, coral reefs. Cameron wanted a world where nature wasn't just scenery, but a character. The rendering was so complex that some shots took more than 40 hours of computer processing for just a few seconds of footage. All for a glow, all for a heartbeat, all for a world that felt alive. And then came Cameron's most revolutionary tool, the virtual camera, a device that allowed him to walk through an empty room and see Pandora in real time. If he moved his hand, a plant giant appeared on the screen. If he turned around, a pack of strange creatures ran past. It was filmmaking and exploration at the same time. Casting Jake Sully was another miracle. Cameron auditioned more than 1,500 actors. Sam Worthington recorded his audition in a small room while living in his car. But Cameron saw something in him instantly: vulnerability, courage, and a quiet strength. Worthington wasn't a Hollywood star, and that made him perfect. Jake's transformation mirrored Sam's own. Nothing about Avatar was simple. Even the breathing of the Na'vi had rules. Their tails followed patterns inspired by felines and primates. Their connection to nature through their cues was based on real scientific studies of underground fungal networks that allow forests on our planet to communicate. And here's a secret few know: Avatar was technically finished in 2005. But Cameron felt the technology still wasn't enough. So he paused the entire project for 4 more years, upgrading every tool, every system, every technique. It was an act of pure creative patience. And that patience changed film history. When Avatar finally premiered in 2009, everything changed. Cinema evolved. 3D was reborn. World building reached new heights. And Pandora became a place people longed to visit. Some viewers even experienced what was later called post-Avatar depression. a genuine sadness from realizing that Pandora wasn't real. But that emotional reaction was proof of something extraordinary. Pandora had become a spiritual place, a reflection of something missing in our own world, a reminder of what we've lost and what we still might save. The greatness of Avatar did not emerge solely from James Cameron's artistic ambition, nor from the breathtaking beauty of Pandora itself, but from a relentless pursuit of authenticity that pushed every boundary of filmmaking. From the very beginning, Cameron understood that he wasn't just creating a movie. He was crafting a living, breathing world. And to bring that world to life, he had to invent tools, techniques, and technologies that simply didn't exist. In many ways, Avatar was not filmed. It was engineered. Every frame, every creature, every whisper of glowing pollen drifting through the air was the result of an almost scientific process of invention. Cameron loved to say that technology should never be the star of a film, that it should be the brush, not the painting. But with Avatar, the brush had to be forged before the painting could even begin. One of the most revolutionary aspects of the film was its performance capture system. Acting for Avatar did not take place in elaborate sets, but in an empty gray space filled with sensors and cameras, a kind of laboratory where imagination had to replace physical surroundings. Actors wore skin-tight suits covered in tiny reflective markers. These markers tracked their every movement, the shift of a shoulder, the twist of a torso, the slightest tremor in a hand. But even that wasn't enough for Cameron. He needed more. He needed emotion. So he created the head-mounted camera, a small device attached to each actor's face, standing only a few centimeters from their eyes. It recorded every micro-expression, the quiver of a lip, the tightening of a jaw, the fear hidden inside a single blink. Zoe Saldana, who played Neytiri, once said she could feel the vibration of the camera every time she inhaled. But she also said something else. Something that explains why the Na'vi feels so alive on screen. She said that the camera captured her emotions so truthfully that she almost forgot she was acting. She wasn't pretending to feel, she was feeling. And that is the secret. The Na'vi don't look real because of technology. They feel real because behind every expression is a human soul. But Cameron didn't stop with the actors. He wanted Pandora itself to behave like a real ecosystem. He enlisted biologists, botanists, zoologists, and even paleontologists to design organisms that looked fantastical but plausible. Every creature on Pandora has an internal logic, a skeletal structure, a respiratory system, a diet, a role in the ecosystem. Nothing exists simply because it looks cool. Everything is connected. The famous banshees, the Ikran, were inspired by a mix of pterosaurs, exotic birds, and big cats. Their movements were designed to feel both alien and familiar, powerful yet graceful. Their wings don't just flap. They flex, twist, and respond to wind currents the way real animal wings do. And that wasn't an accident. Cameron insisted that the animators watch hours of wildlife footage, from predator attacks to bird migrations, studying how real animals move when they're under stress, when they're resting, when they're hunting. Pandora's plants received the same level of attention. Many were based on deep-sea organisms Cameron encountered during his underwater expeditions. Creatures with bioluminescent bodies, soft pulses of light, and delicate hypnotic movements. That's why many plants on Pandora don't just glow. They breathe, they react, they communicate. When the characters walk through the forest, the ground lights up beneath their feet, not for visual spectacle, but because the forest is alive, listening, responding, aware. One of the greatest technical marvels of the film was the creation of the bioluminescent jungle. At first, the visual effects teams thought Cameron was asking for too much. They told him the glowing textures would take an enormous amount of processing time. Cameron simply smiled and said, "Make it work." And they did. There is a famous anecdote that illustrates this obsession. A single shot of the glowing forest, just a few seconds long, took more than 2 days of non-stop computing power to render not a battle scene, not a flight sequence, a quiet moment in the forest. That's how far Cameron was willing to go for beauty. But perhaps the most groundbreaking tool Cameron invented was the virtual camera, a device that allowed him to walk inside the digital world as if it were real. While actors performed in the capture stage, Cameron could hold this camera and see, in real time, the world of Pandora overlaid on their movements. If he stepped forward, he entered a glowing glade. If he looked up, he saw floating mountains. If he turned around, digital creatures scurried past him. For the first time in the history of cinema, a director could literally film inside a world that didn't exist. It wasn't just revolutionary, it was transformative. Actors felt liberated. They could finally understand their environment instead of imagining it blindly. And Cameron himself became an explorer, walking through Pandora as if he were documenting a real place. But the pursuit of realism didn't end with technology. It extended to the physicality of the characters. Cameron believed that to portray an alien people authentically, the actors needed to embody their spirits. So he brought in experts in archery, martial arts, indigenous dance, and even breathwork. The actors trained barefoot, learned to move with their hips first, and practice fluidity to match the graceful cat-like nature of the Na'vi. They studied tribal customs from around the world, from Polynesian rituals to African dance to Native American symbolism, pulling threads of humanity into an alien culture. The language of the Na'vi was another monumental achievement. Cameron hired linguist Paul Frommer to develop a complete functional language with grammar, syntax, and phonetics. Frommer designed sounds that felt both exotic and pronounceable, using tonal patterns inspired by Polynesian languages and consonant clusters drawn from African dialects. Many viewers believe Na'vi is nonsense, but it isn't. It's a language that could genuinely be spoken by a community, and today it actually is. Fans have learned it, expanded it, and built a small but passionate linguistic community around it. And then there are the floating mountains, the Hallelujah Mountains, one of the most iconic images in modern cinema. Many people assume they came purely from fantasy, but the inspiration came from reality. Cameron and his team studied the sandstone pillars of Zhangjiajie in China, magnificent formations that rise like fingers from the earth. When the team visited the region, they were so overwhelmed that they scanned the actual cliffs and used them as foundational shapes for Pandora's floating islands. The magnetic levitation was added as a sci-fi touch. But the majesty of the mountains themselves came from the real world. Even the smallest sound in the film had intention. The call of the banshee, the rustle of the glowing leaves, the deep resonant heartbeat of the Tree of Souls. Sound designers blended nature recordings from oceans, forests, wind tunnels, insects, and whales. then layered them with digital effects to create a soundscape that felt organic but otherworldly. If you listen closely, many of Pandora's forest sounds have harmonics that echo human voices. It creates a subconscious feeling that the planet is singing, watching, communicating. And yet, despite all of this innovation, Avatar nearly didn't happen. In the early 2000s, studios refused to fund it. They said it was too expensive, too ambitious, too strange. Cameron refused to compromise. He financed prototypes himself. He built a team that believed in the vision. And he waited, patiently, for technology to catch up. It took over 10 years. 10 years of persistence, doubt, trial, error, silence, and reinvention. But Cameron wasn't interested in making a movie quickly. He wanted to make the right movie, the one he had dreamed of since he was a child sketching alien creatures at his desk. When Avatar finally released in 2009, something extraordinary happened. People didn't just watch the film. They entered it. They felt Pandora. They mourned its destruction. They fell in love with its beauty. And the world reacted in a way no one expected. Forums filled with people confessing to feeling sadness, even depression, because Pandora wasn't real. They longed to return to a place that existed only in pixels and imagination. Psychologists studied the phenomenon. News outlets reported on it. But Cameron understood it instinctively. He had built a world so rich, so immersive, so emotionally resonant, that audiences felt it as a memory, not as fiction. Avatar became a mirror, reflecting our relationship with nature, with each other, and with the world we've created. The Na'vi are not just aliens. They are a reminder of what humanity could be if we lived with balance, respect, and harmony. Pandora is not just a planet. It is a possibility, a dream carved into the light of a movie screen. And behind it all lay the invisible truth. None of this existed before Cameron imagined it. He dreamed a world. And then he invented the tools required to bring that dream to life. That is the true miracle of Avatar. And the truth is, the impact of Avatar didn't stop when the credits began to roll. In many ways, that was only the beginning. Because as people walked out of the theater, still glowing with the blues and violets of Pandora, something unexpected happened. A feeling spread across the world. A strange emotional longing. Something that many later called post-Avatar depression. It wasn't a medical condition, of course, but it described something real. Viewers all over the globe confessed they felt sad after the movie, saddened by the realization that Pandora wasn't a place they could actually visit. That the floating mountains, the glowing forests, the spiritual connection to all living things existed only on a screen. But at the same time, that sadness revealed something beautiful. It showed just how deeply Avatar touched the human heart. It wasn't just entertainment. It was a reminder of a world we wish existed. A world that feels possible, even if it lives only in our imagination. And what made Avatar resonate so intensely? It wasn't only the technology, although the technology was revolutionary. It wasn't only the visual spectacle, although the visuals were breathtaking. What truly stayed with people was the message hidden beneath the colors and the light. A message about connection, about respect, about balance, about remembering a truth we often forget, that we are part of something larger. Pandora is not just a fictional moon. It's a metaphor. a reflection of what our own world could be, or could have been, if we had listened more, cared more, protected more. The Na'vi are not simply an alien species. They are a representation of harmony, of community, of a way of life deeply tied to nature. Their connection through Tsahelu, the bond, is more than a biological mechanism. It's a symbol of unity. Unity with the animals they ride, with the trees that guide them, with the energy that lives in everything. James Cameron once said that Ewa, the great guiding force of Pandora, is his tribute to the real networks that connect ecosystems here on Earth. The underground mycelium networks, the communication between trees, the invisible intelligence of nature. Avatar amplifies these ideas and turns them into something we can see, feel, experience. It invites us not only to observe Pandora, but to reflect on our own planet. The destruction of the home tree is not just a dramatic plot point. It's a warning. A mirror. A reminder of the forests we have lost, of the lands that have been taken, of the voices that were never heard. And that is why the scene hurts so much. It's not fictional violence, it's symbolic truth. But Avatar also brings hope. Through the Na'vi, Cameron shows us a version of humanity that remembers how to listen, how to respect, how to live not above nature, but within it. Jake Sully's transformation is not only physical, it's spiritual. It's the journey of someone who arrives lost, disconnected, wounded, and finds meaning through connection. He doesn't only gain a new body, he gains a new perspective, a new soul. That is one of the reasons why Avatar became unforgettable. It doesn't only ask, what if aliens existed? It asks, what if we rediscovered who we truly are? And the world answered that question. After the film's release, thousands of people searched for ways to reconnect with nature. Some studied indigenous cultures more deeply. Others learned about ecology, conservation, sustainability. Teachers used Avatar to talk about the environment. Artists used it to create new worlds. Scientists used it to spark conversations about the future of our planet. Avatar didn't just influence cinema. It influenced minds. And then came something even more fascinating: the creative ripple effect. The techniques James Cameron invented for the film spread across the industry. Studios used his cameras, his software, his methods. Movies like The Avengers, The Hobbit, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and many others all grew from seeds planted by Avatar. Motion capture became the standard. Facial animation changed forever. 3D films exploded in popularity. Cameron didn't just create a movie. He changed the tools storytellers use to build worlds. But the cultural impact doesn't end with technology. The glowing forests of Pandora inspired clothing lines, makeup trends, digital art, photography styles. The Na'vi language became one of the most studied fictional languages ever created. People learned it purely out of passion. Some even spoke it at conventions. Avatar became a global phenomenon, not just because it was beautiful, but because it made people feel something real. Wonder, nostalgia, longing. A sense of belonging to a world untouched by greed. And behind all of this is a question, one that quietly beats beneath every scene, every creature, every color. What does it mean to be connected? Connected to the land. Connected to each other. connected to our own identity. Jake's journey embodies this idea. He begins as a soldier without a mission, without a purpose, without a place where he feels he belongs. But Pandora reveals something inside him, something ancient, something human, something true. His transformation is not an escape, it's an awakening. And that final moment when he opens his eyes in his Navi body is more than a powerful ending. It's a rebirth, a symbolic invitation, a whisper that says, open your eyes too. See the world differently. Reconnect with what matters. Because the real magic of Avatar is not just its visuals, it's the way it transforms us, even if just a little. And that is why, years later, Pandora still feels alive. It lives in the imagination of millions, in the artists it inspired, in the conversations it sparked, in the emotions it awakened. Pandora is not only a world we visited, it's a world we carry. And maybe that's why Avatar remains so powerful, because it reminds us that beauty still exists, that connection still matters, that hope is still possible, and that even if Pandora is not real, the feelings it awakens absolutely are. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the world of Avatar. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell me in the comments what movie you'd like me to explore in the next videos.